Okay, here's the meat. Here's what the end of all of that video would have been. As you can see, it would have been a very long video if I tried to do this all in one video. I have receipts. And this is the numbers that I came up with. And I will explain the source of all of these numbers. I'll put this up against the screen later so that you can pause it and make a copy of it. This is in 1080p, so it should be good enough for the numbers to be legible. We're going to talk about survival wage. This is the minimum amount of money necessary per hour for a person working full-time 40 hours a week to be able to survive above the poverty line without accepting any form of assistance, welfare, cheat codes, niche cherry picking, anything. Everything has to be paid for from your own wage. We are assuming your average typical American family, your average typical young person who just turned 18 and they're entering the workforce and living on their own. Okay? This is the minimum. This is cost of life for which no wage should be less. Any job worth paying for is worth paying this much for. If you can't afford to pay this much, you should not be allowed to have an employee because that's called theft. And when it comes to stealing labor, we have a term for that. It's called slavery. Now, even this number, I don't think is possible. This number has some simply massive assumptions built into it, just because actually calculating this gets pretty complex. But I think we can get within the 90th percentile, meaning we can get close enough to say we have a pretty good grasp on this. Okay, this is survival wage, not a living wage. Okay, living wage is a totally separate thing that has way more complications. It's not really that complicated, but the propaganda, brainwashing, and political biasing in this country have made it a very complex issue. We are talking survival wage, not hillbilly mountain man survival. We are going to assume the basics. Okay? Housing, food, hygiene, clothing, health, transportation, communications, the very basics. So this person has to be able to communicate, they have to have a place to live, they have to have health care, they have to have food, they have to have utilities, they have to have basic transportation. Whether that be a car or public transportation, it's actually about the same cost. In fact, public transportation typically costs more than having a car in their separate environments. Of course, both in the same environment have varying costs. Like, for example, a car in a city might cost more than public transportation, but a car in a rural environment is cheaper than public transportation is in a city. Okay? But that's also why wages outside of cities tend to be lower and wages inside cities tend to be higher, because the cost of living is higher. So we're ignoring those variations. We're taking a very basic average here. There's a couple of assumptions we're going to make here. These assumptions make these numbers lower than they should be. Meaning, once we correct these assumptions, the number will probably be higher, not lower. But we're going to make these assumptions just to make it even vaguely possible for us to come up with a number. This assumes that you are living in a lower cost portion of the country. So if we take all the places you can live in the country and put them on a graph, we're going to take median and lower. So the bottom 50% of lowest cost to live locations. So, you're probably not going to be able to use these numbers in places like Philadelphia or Austin or San Francisco or Los Angeles, stuff like that, okay? It all depends. Because there's lots of cherry picking, cheat codes, and stuff like that. Now, let's describe what those things are. The obvious ones are pretty easy. Cherry picking and niche selection. So, for example, my brother in Philadelphia has an apartment for $500 a month, utilities included. Okay, so cost of living is $500 for rent. No, rent's $1,200. He has a cherry pick. There's maybe 100 of those places in existence in the entire city. There's 4 million people in the city. Okay, that's an extreme cherry pick that you basically have to get lucky to find one. He lives in an apartment that's smaller than my bedroom. My bedroom and bathroom in my home, and I live in a small mobile home, 1,450 square feet. My bedroom and bathroom are bigger than his entire apartment. He has to turn sideways and squeeze past the fridge to get to the bathroom. Okay? He's not fat like I am. So that's a cherry pick. That's a niche. Because 2 million people, half the population of the city, can't get that. Okay, so you can't use cherry picking. You can't use niche selections. You have to use the average, what the bulk can access. Okay, you have, 200,000 people who need an apartment in Philadelphia. What is a price for which you can get an apartment for all 200,000 of those? That's the price you need to use. Okay. You can't use assistance. So if you get any form of welfare, government assistance, church assistance, family assistance, that's all assistance. And you have to add the value of that assistance to your wage. You also can't use cheat codes. Okay? One of the biggest cheat codes that you've been brainwashed into accepting as normal, and it's not, is you need a roommate to be able to afford a place to live. Getting a roommate is supposed to be a cheat code that financially benefits you. It's not supposed to be a cheat code that allows your employer to pay you less. Okay? So you can't use that. You can't use half rent because you have a roommate. You have to count the whole rent. You have to count what it costs one person to get a single apartment. Okay? Getting married, having a girlfriend, those are all cheat codes. You have to factor in the cost of those cheat codes into your wage. Okay? So if you save $600 a month by having a roommate, you have to count that roommate as $600 of income on the income side of this equation. Okay? Let me give you an example that you will understand. Because you're not going to understand the roommate one unless you actually think about this logically. You're going to say, but that's normal, but that's normal, but that's normal, because you've been brainwashed into thinking that. Let me give you an example where it makes sense. Imagine you have Pop's old beat-up pickup truck, Ford F-150, a 1992 Ford F-150, an old, it's reliable, but, you're getting 12 miles a gallon. Pickup trucks suddenly become really valuable, like they did over the pandemic, and you trade that pickup truck in for a Prius. Now you're getting 50 miles a gallon. You pull up to work and your boss goes, "Oh, got rid of the pickup truck for a Prius, huh? Okay, well, now instead of you getting $14 an hour, you're getting $12 an hour because you don't need as much. You get better gas mileage." Your boss basically just stole your cheat code. He stole your gas savings and kept it for himself. I'm pretty sure most of you would give that a hard fuck you. Okay? Well, that's the same thing as requiring a roommate to survive. That's your employer stealing your cheat code to save you money and instead using it to pay you less. So you cannot use cheat codes. If you have a cheat code, you have to factor in the cost savings of that cheat code and count that as income. Okay? One person working 40 hours a week, full time, how much does that person need to make? That 19-year-old person need to make to survive? Now, we have to define survive. You're not going to like this. It's a lot worse than you think. First, we're going to make a couple of more assumptions. These are big conservative assumptions because they're unlikely to actually be true in the long run, and they save you a lot of money to make these assumptions. But for now, we have to make these assumptions just to get the discussion rolling. We're assuming your parents helped you get your first car and your first phone. So you turn 19 or 18, you move out, get your own place. Your parents help you with your down payment and security. Your parents helped you get the car, so you start off with a good working car, or you earn that car while living with your parents, because your cost of living was lower. And you start off with a good modern working phone. Okay, 70% of the world has a smartphone, so that's not uncommon. Even a really advanced one like this, Helio G99 processor, infrared blaster, night vision camera, 64 megapixel camera, macro vision camera, infrared illuminator LEDs, infrared blaster remote, 3.5 watt speaker, 256 gigs of memory, 12 gigabytes of RAM, 7-inch screen, all the SD card slot, all that shit, a dock, everything. This phone's $200. Okay, they're not expensive, and you can get a couple-year-old flagship phone for $100. You can even get a brand new, pretty decent, Samsung low-grade phone for like $105. So smartphone's not expensive, but let's assume you start off with one. Okay? Now, in order to be an average, typical person in today's society, you're going to need transportation and you're going to need communications. But you don't need the kind of communications you think you need. Okay? So we're going to get to that in a minute. So we're going to assume you already have a car, you already have a phone, your parents help you with your first and last month in security deposit. You are now living on your own with a paid-off car, a paid-off phone. You get a prepaid phone plan at $25 a month. So you're going with somebody like Mint or Hello Mobile or Boost, your cheap, unlimited, prepaid phone plan. That's all you get for communications. And you have to have that. You can't function in today's society on average without it. There are many places where you can't even apply for a job in person. They won't even know how to. They have no papers, no nothing. You have to go to a website to do it. Okay? And you can't just tell people, go to the library for all their communications needs. They need an address for you, and they need to be able to call you or contact you. So you need an email address, you need an address, you need a phone number. But it's only $25 a month. It's dirt cheap. Okay? That's all you get for communications. You don't get any home internet. No Comcast, no Verizon, no CenturyLink, no Starlink. You get no home internet. For this survival wage, you get no home internet. That also means no Netflix, no Xbox Live, no streaming services, no cable TV. You don't get any of that. You have your $25 a month prepaid, bare bones, basic phone service, and whatever entertainment you can get on that little 7-inch screen for free. Now, if you're lucky, maybe you can squirrel away $50 and buy a 32-inch flat screen from the pawn shop or a thrift store or a yard sale, or a friend can give you their old TV, and you can save up enough money to buy the $3 cable that would allow you to connect your phone to that TV. Well, at least now you can watch free movies on a big screen using your phone as the player. So you can do things like that. You can't buy any games. You can't buy any programs. Well, you can maybe afford a couple dollars here and there to buy an app, but you're not going to be playing gambling games. You're not going to be buying expensive advanced games. You don't have the money. You just don't. I mean, maybe you can have an Xbox if a friend gives you one as a gift. If you get, that old Xbox 360 or something like that, but you just don't have the money. Okay? Here are the numbers that I came up with. Okay, now keep in mind, these numbers are too low, because these numbers were from a year and a half ago when I did all the research and discovered all these numbers. It was from a year and a half ago. You're going to go find these same numbers, and they're going to be higher than the numbers I'm giving you. Rent, $1,100. That's already almost $1,300. Okay, but we're going to use the numbers I have. Rent, $1,100. Healthcare. This is the one I disagree with. Google says the average out-of-pocket for healthcare is $456 a year. I think that's wrong. I've never seen healthcare for less than $700 a month. And that's with a high deductible and high out-of-pocket. So your actual monthly cost is a whole lot higher. I suspect that Google is using the what's that government program to get discount, American Care Act, ACA, the marketplace where you can get health insurance at a discount through the government. I suspect they're using that number. I suspect that's where they're coming up with that number. Because if you're paying $200 or $300 from that, plus your copays and stuff like that, I could see your average being around $450. So that's technically welfare. Well, that's not technically at all. That is. That's welfare. But because that's the only valid number I can come up with, we're going to use it. I don't think it's valid, but we're going to use it. Because we're making two very large conservative assumptions in this calculation. We're assuming your car will never have a major breakdown. It's going to need maintenance, it's going to need parts, but it's never going to have a major breakdown, like chassis failure, engine failure, transmission failure. Okay? We're also assuming you're never going to have a serious health issue. You're not going to break a leg. You're not going to have a serious issue with cancer, disease, or anything else. You're going to be a relatively healthy person most of your life. As you can see, those are two very big assumptions, but bear with me here, okay? Because remember, anything outside of those assumptions makes this number bigger. Nothing you do can make this number smaller. Everything you can do makes this number bigger, okay? So let's go with these lowest numbers. $456 for healthcare. Food, $300. That's hard. It depends on where you live. Like in Pennsylvania where I lived, I could eat very well on $300 a month. But I'm not factoring in my transportation costs because I already have a shitty little electric car. So I could basically drive for free. I solar charge my car, so I don't have to buy gasoline for local driving. I fill up my gas tank once every 2 months. Okay, that's how little gas I use. I have to. I don't have enough money. If I had to fill up my gas tank every week, I'd be in deep shit. It's only an 11-gallon gas tank. So if I didn't have that little electric car, I can only go 40 miles. I'd be in deep shit. Food, $300. Except in a few select places where readily available cheap food is there, you are not going to eat well on $300 a month. But you will survive. You will live. Utilities, $200. This is another big assumption. Okay? That $200 number, you're not living in Pennsylvania. You're not living anywhere north of Tennessee with that number. That number is going to have to be $300 or $400 if you want to live north of Tennessee. So we're assuming you're living in the South where winter never gets really, really harsh. Okay? Where you have a relatively mild winter. Believe it or not, except for places like Florida, where the humidity is just ridiculous, or parts of Texas, Galveston and stuff like that. Most places, it's a lot cheaper to cool down than it is to heat up. Because heating just requires a gargantuan amount of energy. I was paying $600 a month for propane to heat my house in Pennsylvania. That's not for electricity, that's just the gas, that's just the propane. Okay? So we're assuming you live in the South, and we're assuming you live very conservatively in a very small place. So $200 a month for utilities. That's everything. Sewer, trash, electric, gas, heat, whatever. All of it. Water, all of it. All utilities, $200. Car insurance. This is another number where we make a very big assumption. We are assuming that you have a car that is reasonably insurable, that you have reasonably decent credit, and we're also assuming something impossible. We're assuming you're getting an insurance rate of somebody 25 and older. Because if you're under 25, you are probably never going to come anywhere close to touching this insurance price. But let's go with it. About $150 a month. Because when you look up the average, that's what it comes up to. But that's including people like me who pay $600 a year for car insurance. All right, so I disrupt the average in that regard. Okay, so $150 a month for car insurance. That is something that, as long as you keep your nose clean, could come down in price once you pass 25. But you got to make it the next 7 years to get to that point. Maintenance, $42. Okay, maintenance is the basic upkeep on the car. Wiper blades, tires, brake pads, oil changes, filter changes, a ball joint here or there, a bearing here or there, a hub assembly here or there, a shock here or there over the lifespan of the car. And we are assuming you do all this work yourself for the most part. Because the moment you start paying somebody to do this work, that number gets blown right out of the water. Okay? So you're putting aside about $500 a year for the car. That's about what maintenance on a car, if you do it yourself, costs per year. That's a pretty fair number. Fuel. Now, this was based on gas prices a year and a half ago. So if you calculate this again, you'll find that this number is quite a bit bigger today. Okay? $146. This is using the national average miles driven per year, which is 14,263 miles at the time that I looked up this data. And this is assuming the national average fuel economy of 24.5 miles per gallon, again, as of the time that I looked up this data. You don't get any extra driving. You want to go do some skiing at even a free mountain? Well, unless you can fit that within your average 14,000 miles a year, you don't have the budget for it. So you better hope a friend is going to take you with them. Basics, $50. The basics are the bare minimums for decent survival and hygiene. We're talking things like clothes, a pan here and there, a glass here and there, t-shirts, soap, towels, toilet paper, trash bags, the basics of survival. It's about $50 a month. That's a reasonable average for that. Some months you'll spend more, some months you'll spend less. It's going to average out to about 50. DMV. We are, again, making an assumption. We are, for example, when I was looking at what state to move to, one of the criteria for the state I moved to was a state that had low DMV costs. $13 a month. Now keep in mind that $13 a month includes amortized values that could be as long as 8 years. For example, my driver's license, I believe, is $84, and it's good for 8 years. So I divide by 8 and divide by 12 to come up with my per month cost for that. That's how much money you have to put aside, assuming you live in one of those cheaper states where you're basically just paying $40 a month of registration and $50 a month or $50 a year for inspection, stuff like that. So $13 a month. That's it. How about streaming? You don't get that. How about home internet? You don't get that. How about cable TV service? Nope, you don't get that. How about eating out? If I want to go to a restaurant, nope, you can't eat out, not even once. How about fast food? Nope. You could maybe do McDonald's. Like if you order through their app, you can depending on where you live, depending on what food costs where you live, you can sometimes get things at McDonald's for less than what it would cost you to make it home. For example, one of the luxury items that I like getting is the iced coffee from McDonald's. It's 99 cents through the app. I can't make a 30-ounce iced coffee at home for 99 cents. It'd cost me more than $1 to make that at home. But part of that is because food is expensive here and water is expensive here. Luxuries of any sort. Pizza delivery. Chinese takeout. Nope. Entertainment. Survival, cost of living. You get none of that. You don't, no dollars for any of that is factored into this price. Okay? No extras on your phone, no home internet, no entertainment, no streaming service, no gaming services, no luxuries that have a monthly cost. None. Maybe if you were able to cut back a tiny bit here and there on some of these services, maybe go, 8,000 miles between oil changes instead of 6,000 or 7,000 miles. Maybe you can squeak out a trip to the movie theater once or twice a year, something like that. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty hard for you to get any form of entertainment on this budget. It's going to be a hard life, a very Spartan hard life. Now, the total number I come up with for that, keep in mind, we already know that number is way too low because rent is already $1,300. But this was a year and a half ago that I looked at these numbers. I'm going to have to actually do these numbers again. I'll probably have to do them once a year. The number we come up with is $29,760. We're not done yet. You still have to factor in taxes. So that $29,760 is after taxes. So you have to earn enough money so that after taxes you end up with $29,760. That number is $37,200. So in order to have this life that I just described, this Spartan, you have no life. You are barely surviving. You exist solely to work and to breathe one more day life that I've described with absolutely no fun or entertainment that you can't do for free. Okay, you better hope you get some nice Christmas gifts to give you hobbies because you're going to live a very boring life. Okay? That lifestyle requires $37,200. That's $18.60 an hour if you work 2,000 hours a year at a 40-hour-a-week full-time job. $19 an hour as of a year and a half ago is the bare minimum you can make. Look up the numbers yourself. There's all the numbers. Let me zoom out a little bit right there. You might be asking, what's this number? And what's this number here? That is $30,360 and $15.18 an hour. That's if we institute universal health care. If we institute universal health care, we can eliminate the $456 a month for health care. And that would make $15 an hour a survival wage. Not a living wage, a survival wage. Only in the cheapest parts of the country. If you live anywhere above the median, your numbers are going to be higher. Now, you go online and you start looking up these numbers. If you can find me a viable, sourced, vetted, reasonable, logical, attainable number less than this, by all means, let me know. That means minimum wage, federal minimum wage, at a minimum, should be $20 an hour. There is no place in this country where you can survive on less than $20 an hour without some pretty hefty cheat codes or assistance of some form or another. No place. Now, I can live on less, but I have some pretty healthy cheat codes. I own this home, so I don't have to pay rent. So that $1,200 is gone. My rent's $50 a month. That's the property taxes I have to pay to the government. Okay, it's a manufactured home, but I own it. It's on my own land. It's not a lot. I have 1.25 acres out in New Mexico. That's a pretty healthy G code. You're never going to get there on this. You're never going to reach that on this. Okay, so you can't say buy your home, because you have to make enough money to be able to buy your home. Okay. There is no place in the country where minimum wage should be less than $20 an hour. But that's a lot of money. No, it's not. $20 an hour is not a lot of money. Remember, in 1968, the guy getting $4 an hour, that's equivalent to $35.47 an hour. Minimum wage in 1968 was $1.60. That's equivalent to $14 an hour. $20 an hour is not a lot of money. You've just been brainwashed into thinking it is. You're so used to enacting welfare assistance cheat codes. One of the biggest cheat codes that you can do is to forego health care, not have health care. That brings your cost of living right down from 19 to 15, or today from 20 to 16, because that saves you basically $4 an hour. And of course now they penalize you if you don't have health care. And you're making $37,000 a year. You won't qualify for food stamps. You won't qualify for housing assistance. You won't qualify for LIHEAP. You won't qualify for state health care. You won't even qualify for any of these benefits. You're living a Spartan, bare existence of life. You're living a life that is so dull and so boring that you literally are waiting to die as you work every day of your life. And you wouldn't even qualify for any of the programs for welfare assistance that are out there, because you'd make too much money. I'm pretty sure $37,000 a year would disqualify you from everything. Like, you would qualify for nothing. Something to think about. Now, most people don't actually sit down and figure out, what does life cost? Well, remember when we were talking about the cost of labor and the price of labor? This is the cost of labor. Supply and demand can't affect this. Market forces cannot affect this. This is the cost. This is the $1 to make the bottle cap. The only thing market forces and supply and demand can impact is how much more than this you can command. The profit portion, from $1.01 to $1 to $2. Okay? That's what market forces and supply and demand can influence. Anything less than this is just slavery. You can call it whatever you want, but it boils down to slavery. You're stealing people's labor, and you're not even paying them cost for it. Now, that means some businesses in this country are no longer economically viable. That's right. Some businesses will go out of business. If your business cannot afford to pay even a survival wage, not to speak of a living wage, because, a survival wage is also a form of slavery. It's not the same as being paid less than cost, but it's just as sinister. Literally living every day as a machine, surviving day to day just to work. No enjoyment, no life, no nothing. And more than 50% of the country makes less than this. Median per capita income. That means 50% of the entire working population, 80 million people, make less than this. This is the absolute minimum amount required to even survive. Look at the numbers. Go look them up for yourself. Go research these numbers. You're going to see I'm not full of shit. Any numbers you come up with are going to be larger than this if you follow the rules. Any numbers you find will be higher than this. And 50% of the entire country makes less than this. Think about that.